We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today. Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Thursday night and it is just me and Gibbo again on NUFC Matters. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we are missing our number 9, our sidekick, Supermac John, and we were just having a chat off air beforehand. We have managed to speak to his good lady Carol, and we've got a bit of an update, and still no sign of recovery really with Mal, and he's in the right place, shall we say, John?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my heart goes out to him because he like all of us, football's a huge part of his life, and Newcastle United sat right at the centre of that. And his enjoyment is doing podcasts like this, doing his column in the Chronicle with me, going to the matches, watching the away games on the telly, and none of that's available to him at the moment. And it's a big hole in his life. And it's a tough old time for him. We all get tough old times from time to time. I think it's called age, isn't it? But it happens to all of us. Well, it hasn't happened to you yet, Steve, but it will, mate.
It will.
It's something for you to look forward to.
Cheers, John. Thanks, mate.
But hey, listen, I tell you what, it's better than the alternative. Don't worry about that. Much better than the alternative. But yes, we both, and I know all the listeners, because they're very much into Mal, we wish him all the very best for as quick a recovery as we can, because we miss him on here and we know how much he misses it. So all the best, big man.
Yeah, all the best, big man, if you're tuning in, and let's hope he's on the road to recovery. Newcastle United need to be on the road to recovery sooner rather than later. John, we've sugar-coated the victories and the tongue-in-cheek I've said on here, we could have been going into this weekend's game top of the league and looking to extend our lead. I think everybody knows I've got a little sense of humour when I was saying that. And we came back down to earth with a big bump last week, which I think we could all see coming. What's your thoughts on that defeat at Fulham, first of all?
Well, yes, performances had indicated that this was going to happen. We were hoping it wasn't going to happen at Fulham. They weren't good enough to scare a team in our position at that time, which is in the top 4. But what was frightening was that was our worst performance of the season by a considerable distance. In the first half, for me, we were totally unrecognisable. I mean, where did we come from? I thought we were back with Steve Bruce and Mike Ashley. It was absolutely awful. Yes, let's not get too carried away. It's only one defeat so far this season. But what worries me is that we've had a gentle start to the season, Steve, and we're now coming into the rough seas, which was bound to happen after a gentle start. In our next 5 games, we've got Man City at home, Chelsea away, in the league I'm talking, not the League Cup, and Arsenal at home. They're 3 tough games in the next 5, and we've got to be on our blob to be able to combat that. And, to produce our worst performance of the season and then have to go into our hardest match of the season. I don't know about you, Steve, but I was disappointed that we didn't get Wimbledon away in the League Cup because that could have given us a morale booster. It could have given us an opportunity to try a few things tactically, to switch the personnel a little bit, and to get us a morale boosting win to go into City with. And all those chances were denied us. Now, it makes team selection for this one so much harder because you've got to take it on the evidence of your eyes against Fulham and your prayers that your blue chip players will suddenly become blue chip players again. Because really, the tone of our season over the last 2 years and the beginning of the season is set by your blue chip players. How do they do? How does Anthony Gordon do in Alexander Isak and Bruno and Big Joe? And you know what? All four of them have had a poor season. All four of them are off form. Now, that's understandable. If one of them goes off form, that's understandable. It happens to even the best players. But all four to go off form at the same time, Steve, that is worrying. That is really worrying. Because, to be truthful, Isak is exempt because he hasn't got great service, etc., and he's got nobody pushing for his place. So Isak's going to stay in the team, come what may. But you know, if we were being ruthless, and it won't happen, but if we were being ruthless, Bruno, Big Joe, and even Anthony Gordon couldn't complain if they were dropped. They couldn't complain. I'm not suggesting they're going to be dropped for Man City, by the way, because Eddie Howe won't go down that route. That would be massive gamble. But I mean, on form, all three of those guys, and almost Isak, if there was anybody challenging him, they could all be dropped, you know.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you mentioned the Wimbledon game. I was the polar opposite. I felt missing that game gives Eddie a chance to get in there and sort it all out, which he needs to do. By his own admission, he's needed to do that after the first few league games. But once again, you know, we underperformed, and this time we've come a cropper. And I can see both sides. I can see why some people felt Tuesday night was a good time to give people a run out and to get people on the pitch who maybe haven't had any game time. I tell you the worrying thing for me, John, and we touched on it last week, is Eddie Howe doesn't seem to know his best team, John.
Yeah, you said that last week, and I mean, that is blatantly obvious, and that is a concern. I mean, by his own admission, he has got the team selection wrong in the last two games. And how can I say that? Because at half time, over two games, he's made 5 changes. 3 against Wolves and 2 in the last game. He's made 5 changes at half time. Now, you can give Eddie huge credit in saying that he had a look at the first halves in those 2 games. They weren't good enough, so he had the guts to change things early. But what it also tells you is the team selection was wrong. Else he wouldn't have had to change it. Now, the changes worked against Wolves in terms of the results and didn't work against Fulham. But yes, the team selection is wrong. And I tell you what, right now, what team selection does he know for certain against Manchester City? I would suggest he doesn't know his fullbacks. Does he play Livramento or Trippier at right back? Does he play Kelly or Hall at left back? I reckon he doesn't know his middle three, because he's ignored Tonali from starting, but surely he can't ignore him again on Saturday. But, you know, the form of his 2 Brazilian boys, does he bring Tonali in? Willock was gambled on for the first half and was well off the pace and is not match sharp. So he doesn't know his middle three. And what's he do about Gordon and Harvey Barnes in terms of, you know, does he play both of them, which I would do with Isak, and play Gordon on the right? There's so much of his team he doesn't know. In fact, all he does know is the fact that you'll play Isak and Pope because you've got no alternatives to those two. We haven't really got an alternative goalkeeper or centre forward.
What's your best fullback pairing, John? First of all, who should we be playing? Should we be going for the youth in Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall, which he put faith in at the start of the season, or should we be going for like the older guard and going for Emil Kraft at right back and Kieran Trippier at left back, or the new guy? What do we do? Or do we revert back to having Dan Burn at left back? Do we bring the only real left back that we know who's at the club in? Do we bring Matt Targett in from the cold, put him at left back and play Trippier right back? What's your ideal pairing?
I mean, it's frightening, isn't it, that we don't know at this stage. It's absolutely frightening. And really, I could be persuaded to almost go any way. And you know why I say that? Because whatever pairing there's been hasn't worked so far. And that's what's frightening about it. I think I would leave out Trippier at the moment, because I think Trips, like Anthony Gordon, has got something going on with him that's making life very difficult for him. We know more or less what it is with Trips, his personal situation. He reluctantly wants to get away from Newcastle and get a new start. Preferably not in the Premier League. He's quite happy to go abroad for his new start, in the way he did with Atletico Madrid, and that was a massive, massive success for him. I think at this stage of his life, with his personal life, with everything else that's going for him, with his last payday, I think he's almost made up his mind that his immediate future is going to be away from Newcastle. Not that he would ever do the dirty on the club, not that he would ever not give 100%, etc., etc. But I think he is a little bit scrambled, and for that reason alone, I wouldn't start him. Although his experience, it says an awful lot about putting him in against Man City. But if you get a pacey outside left against him, if you get Doku against him, etc., it could be very, very difficult. I mean, it left back, I've been disappointed with the form of Hall, and I've been very disappointed with the form of Kelly since he joined us, because I was expecting a little bit more from him. I think I would go for this match with Livramento and with Hall. Interesting, because you put a name in there, Steve, that I've never even considered starting, and that's Kraft at right back. He did brilliant right-sided centre-half when he was necessary during Shaw, but Shaw's got so much more class. You're going to go with Shaw. So, I mean, I think I would go across the back, Livramento, Shaw, Byrne and Hall. But I would do it with no real sense of security. And by Jove, if you're playing Manchester City, having a sense of security takes some doing. I mean, I frightened myself just before I come on air earlier today by having a look. I thought, let's have a look at what we're facing, Manchester City. And what we're facing is the Premier League leaders, the champions for the last 4 seasons, the title winners for 7 of the last 10, won the FA Cup 2023, won the League Cup 2021, in Europe, won the Champions League 2023, the Super Cup 2023, and the World Club Champions 2023. So in the 2020s, they've won just about everything that's gone at the same time as we've won now. But having said that, we've won out, and we've got to be fair and say that our takeover with oil money has happened so much later than theirs. And in fairness, we have, in that short space of time, made 4th top of the Premier League, a Wembley Cup final, and played in the Champions League and had nights like Paris Saint-Germain. So we've made progress. But it all shows the gap between Man City and us, doesn't it? And they couldn't have come along, Steve, at the worst time than straight after Fulham. Their match couldn't have come along. And that's the only reason, Steve, why I wish we'd played at Wimbledon. Because I think we would have still got through. For goodness sake, if we can't be the League Two side, whether it's home or away, we are in the clouds. And I think we would have got through. That might have swept away 1 or 2 of the doubts that was at Fulham. And perhaps he could have put not really putting reserve players into the first team because you're not bothered about the League Cup, but he could have experimented with his middle 3, for example. And by the way, you look at our middle 3, Steve. On paper, we've got some terrific talent when you think Bruno, Tonali, Linton, Joe Willock, and yes, Sean Longstaff with Miley to come. You'd think we've got talent there. You know what? It's our worst. It's our worst segment of play. The middle of the park. Teams are running through us. I mean, from the edge of the opposing penalty area to the edge of our penalty area, when they've got the ball, they just run straight through us. I mean, I'm looking around to see where everybody is. Like, wait a minute, we're still on the pitch here, aren't we? I mean, I think we're paying a little bit of a penalty for not getting a number 6, Steve. We haven't got a defensive midfield player. Now, Eddie thinks that's okay because he thinks Bruno can do it. Tonali has done it on occasions with AC Milan. But who is actually trying to do it? Bruno, bless him, doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to sit in with huge discipline and just get the ball and give it and break up things and get the. He wants to put his Superman cape on and go charging up the front and take off for the stars sort of thing, which is brilliant if you've got a number 6 behind you. But the way we are, and with his lack of pace, people are running off him, running past him as if he's not there. In what looks on paper our strongest department, when you look at the 3 I mentioned, plus Willick, who's good enough to play for England when he's fully fit, you think, wow, aren't we well off? But there's not a defensive player in there. That's all when we've got the ball. And the 2 biggest guys we've got, Man Mountain, Joe Linton, I mean, and Bruno, so off it. I mean, did you see Joe Linton against Fulham? I mean,
Yeah.
he's 8'6" and 18 stone of muscle. And the wind blew him over. I mean, the wind flowed him at Fulham at one stage. He went down, and I thought, wait a minute, the bloke hasn't shoulder charged you yet. And you look and you think, we aren't daft, and Geordie's aren't daft. We know there's something wrong. We just don't know what it is because it's kept in house. But you can tell if you watch Newcastle play, and we're not being overcritical, Steve. We're saying this out of love. We're saying this because it's our club and our players, and we're so grateful for what they've done for us over the last 2 seasons, and we wanted to continue. And we look at Bruno and we say, you're better than that. We look at Joe Linton and say, you're better than that. We look at Isaac and Gordon and say, you're better than that. Because they are better than that. But there's something, isn't there? There might only be a lot of small things, but add up to a big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at Anthony Gordon, bless him, and he's like a little lad that's had his backside smacked, isn't he? He looks so miserable.
Yeah, there's something not right. Mark Byers, he makes a great point, and this is what I was saying to you in the summer, you and Mao. In the friendlies, we played Lewis Hall in the number 6 role, and then at the start of the season, he's left back. Would Lewis Hall be the perfect choice for a number 6?
Well, we've got to. I mean, a lot of people naturally that care about Newcastle are coming up with saying we can't buy a 6 until January. So who could play 6? Well, Tonali could if he was disciplined enough and he sacrificed his going forward. Bruno could in theory, but he's going through such abysmal form. I mean, Bruno was brought off at half time for Brazil in the last international. I mean, his form has gone desperate, and he hasn't got the discipline to be a 6, I think. The point you can make is Hall, who I had overlooked as playing there, which he did in the pre-season and did it well. And then people look at, can Shaw play there or Kelly play there? Well, possibly Shaw could play there, but then again, we're not over endowed with right-sided centre halves, so we would have to play Kraft in there. It's difficult. And of course, the other thing is that I honestly believe, Steve, that all the experiments we are talking about, Eddie would be very reluctant to do them. He prefers to keep faith in the guys he's got and try to get a tune out of them, if you like. I don't think Eddie, he stays loyal and he stays faithful, and he'll look at us and he'll say, 2 years ago we finished 4th top, we'll go down that route again, etc., etc. But something's got to happen. We're not being over dramatic because we've lost one game. we've seen this coming, as you said earlier in this podcast. It's been coming for weeks, and if we don't find an answer quickly, 3 of the next 5 in the league, when we play Man City and Arsenal, who are by far the top 2 teams in this division, and Chelsea away, they're no longer the joke they were last season. They're getting results now, especially at their place. They're 3 tough matches. If we play like we played at Fulham, we'll get nothing but our backside smacked out of those matches. But we've got to keep faith that we're going to do an awful lot better than that. And the point you made earlier, which I'm looking at any flotsam to hang on to give me hope, etc. But the point you made, that at least Wimbledon off give Eddie a full week of training to try to sort it out on the training pitch. Steve, because we're not in Europe, he's had a load of free weeks this season.
He has, yeah.
To sort things out.
You just wonder what it is. If there are other things that are getting in the way. Is that, we had so many bad injuries last year. A lot of people saying, is it down to being overtrained? Trained the Eddie Howe way, etc. Bunce has come in. He was getting a bit of stick online from fans. Is it Bunce? Is he interfering in Eddie's training methods? We don't know. It's all speculation. It's people coming up with solutions. People just wanting a solution. The Mitchell thing and Eddie dragged on. So ultimately, lots of other reasons. Lots of people chucking the 4 penny thing. Jonathan says, never a good time playing Man City, but if we get it right, it could turn out to be the springboard for our season. My head and my heart have different results. Hopefully the heart wins. Davey says, we've got a problem. Our centre-backs don't have pace, so they drop back to deep, thus leaving a big hole between defence and midfield, which is why the opposing midfield run through us. And Yvonne's got an opinion about Gordon. She says, Gordon hasn't looked the happy-go-lucky boy he was down the wings. In fact, on the line up before the games, he looked pensive these days. And David says, Eddie Howe needs to coach, and Mitchell just needs to recruit. Mark says there's a lot of things that happen that we fans never find out. Players may know Howe's been interviewed for England, for instance. And again, this is another rumour that won't go away because there's not a permanent England manager. I've seen it on social media. People saying Howe's been interviewed. There's no proof of that. We don't know that Howe has been interviewed for England. We don't know if anyone's been interviewed. I've seen people linking Lampard to the job. I've seen people linking Ashley Cole to the job. Well, he's, of course, took a coaching role there now. Lots of people have been linked with it, but there's nothing out there that stipulates that. And that wouldn't, for me, that would not give you the reason for the players to be performing the way they are. Because, like you said, Bruno, poor for Brazil, taken off for Brazil. There's lots of people saying lots of things, and none of it has got really any substantial weight behind it. Sutty says, I heard you on Andy Musgrove's podcast, Gibbo, earlier talking about the City game. And when you think we've got players like Pope, Trips, Shaw, Livramento, Bruno, Tonali, Joe Linton, Barnes, Gordon, Isaac to choose from, why are we not optimistic about getting something from the game? Is it the players not performing, or is it how he's setting up the team? And I guess that leads us to a question which somebody asked, would you change the formation? Tom says, would you personally change the formation? And I think what Tom means is moving forward, not just for Man City, John.
Yeah, I can totally understand it, because as things are, they're not working. Now, the only people that know why they're not working are the players themselves and the manager with his coaches, because they're on the training ground every day. And so they see why it's not working. All these theories, Alan Shearer, as you notice, who knows a few things about dressing rooms, says if there's trouble off the pitch, i.e. Mitchell and Howe, then it will filter into the dressing room and will affect the players. Any excuse to not perform or any worry or concerns. I don't know whether that's true or whether it's not true, but there is definitely something wrong. If you take every individual, you can find almost a reason why individuals aren't right. With Anthony Gordon, you can look at the fact that his head was unquestionably turned by the Liverpool thing. He's a Liverpool fan. He was born in Liverpool. He thought it was past the post during the Euros, and all of a sudden it wasn't past the post. Every little thing seems to have gone wrong with him, and he does look beaten before he goes on the park these days. What's wrong with Joe Linton? He's just signed a new contract. He's an absolute man mountain. He's a brute of a guy, a wonderful player. And you know, the guy before mentioned all the good, when he said he'd listened to me with Musgrove, he mentioned all the good players we've got, and yet we're not optimistic. And the whole reason, and he hit the nail on the head in the second part of that question, why aren't we optimistic when we've got all those good players, is because the good players at the moment on name only, not on form. They're not playing like the players they are. I don't recognise Gordon, and I don't recognise Bruno, and I don't recognise Joe Linton. I mean, I don't recognise them from what they are. I mean, how many players can we say, Steve, out of the whole team have had a good season so far? You could probably put Harvey Barnes in because he scores goals. You know, regardless of his form, he scores goals. And at the moment, he's on a bit of a streak. But who else has had a good season over the whole season? Not a good game. And I mean, Pope's made some great saves, but he's thrown a couple in. The full-backs, we don't know where we are with them. We can't pick a middle three with any conviction whatsoever. In fact, from my point of view, Steve, the only guy out of all our super names in the midfield that deserves a starting place is Tonali, who's the one guy that hasn't got it because he hasn't started yet in the league. And, you know, up front, Isak starts because he's the only centre forward we've got. But after 25 goals last season, he's got 1 goal in 6 this season. Now, I know that's because he hasn't been getting fed, he's been isolated, etc. But take this match on Saturday. Isak has 1 goal in 6. Haaland has 100 goals in 105 games for City. I mean, that's terrifying. That's
only one against the two, though, Gibbo.
Correct. That's one of the things that I was, the two things, before we get too depressed, the two things that I can come up with that gives us a little bit of hope for Saturday. One is the big beast up front has only scored 1 in 4 games against us. Can we keep him shackled again? Because in 3 of those 4 games, he hasn't scored against us. Can we do that again? And the other is that for me, for all the dominance of Manchester City in the Premier League for the last 10 seasons, seven titles out of 10, they have never done what Arsenal's Invincibles have done, and that is go through a full Premier League season unbeaten. And that being the case, they're going to lose this season in the Premier League. So why not at Newcastle United? Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, and if you turn around and tell me, well, it's because of form, and we aren't good enough to do it, and etc., and when they lose, it'll be away to Arsenal or something like that. My memory tells me not so long ago in an FA Cup final, it was Wigan v Manchester City, and Wigan won.
Yeah.
So they can be beaten. They can be beaten. It's whether we'll do it.
Anything can happen, John. Anything can happen.
In a 2-horse race, anything's possible. But mind you, I'm not going out to put my penny on it at Ladbrokes tomorrow morning. I'm telling you that.
Good evening to Ian from Preston. He says, yes, completely agree. There's lack of something throughout the team. This seems to off the pace. If you're watching on LinkedIn or Twitter, by the way, jump onto YouTube, search NUFC Matters and subscribe. We still do 7 shows a week. John Rowland, will come to your question in the second half of the show. Krull, to be kind, says, he says Haaland's licking his lips at the thought of Byrne and Shaw. And Rodri is a big miss for them. You are right, Ian, on that. So we'll have a quick break. We'll be back for this. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at skipsandbins.com. Contact them, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Their website, mrvickies.co.uk, telephone 01768 210 102, or email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Thanks to our NUFC Matters fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel and Tourism Award winners 2024. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. All excursions included 3-star plus quality hotels, no interchanges, a 2-crew driver and courier. It's a local family company, and you can find them at www.unitedgrouptravel.com or telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you want to help support the channel, hit the subscribe button. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up under the video. That's the like button. It does help us grow. And click the share button. Help share to your social media. If you want to join the channel for as little as $1.99 a month, then hit the join button under this video today. We also help the food bank on this channel. Visit nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. It takes you to the match day bucket where you can donate some money virtually. Some events for your diary in aid of Dementia Matters. The Long Sands will be reforming and be supported by Lilac Lane and the Chris Norris Band at the Cluny in Newcastle on Saturday, January the 4th, 2025. Tickets are £15 pre-sale from newcastlelegends.com. An evening with Peter Beardsley takes place at the Tyneside Irish Centre on the 10th of January 2025. Tickets available from newcastlelegends.com or from Woucher. And an evening with the Entertainers takes place on the 24th of January 2025. Telephone the box office 0844 249 1000 or visit the website tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk. And the Magpie Lounge at the Gateshead Leisure Centre is now open. 7 tokens for £99. Joe Allen will be hosting tokens with Lee Clark, John Anderson, Steve Howie, Darren Peacock, Supermac, Steve Watson, John Beresford, all between the dates of January and July. £99 for 7 tokens, newcastlelegends.com. And don't forget, you can subscribe to our NUFC Matters fanzine, £20 for 4 issues with all proceeds going to Dementia Matters. If you live overseas, it is £50 for 4 issues. To order now, go to newcastlelegends.com. Welcome back. You're watching NUFC Matters with myself and Gibbo. Lots of questions and lots of things coming in. People want to know whether you'd heard anything about the Man City case. Sutty asked, has Gibbo heard anything on the Man City case? John Rowland says, looks like City have won the apt rule. How do you think this helps Newcastle? And another one from Doug Hall. I mean, we'll be covering this on the Amigos tomorrow night. But says, what do you think? What do you think the chances are of us bringing in a huge sponsorship money now after the Man City development with the Premier League? Don't know if this is for tonight or tomorrow, Steve. We'll discuss it in depth tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, Man City case is always something that we're going to need to watch because it could help us, John.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things whereby you're looking at the fact that you think cynically they've got all the big guns legally to try to blast the Premier League out the water and to survive. And you look at it the other way and think if they were found guilty of 9/10 of the charges, they would be playing Gateshead next season in the conference. They would be relegated so far down the leagues. Because if you remember, on a totally different thing, that happened to Glasgow Rangers in Scotland, Steve, if you remember. They were relegated. They were right up the top with Celtic every year and winning titles in those days. And they got done on financial situation. And the next thing they knew, they woke up and Ali McCoist was taking the team bus to play at Berwick Rangers. They went right down to the second division of the Scottish League and had to fight their way back. And since they got back in the top division, they've only won the title once, that one season under Gerrard. They've never really challenged Celtic successfully yet. So, you look at that. I just somehow, and it's only a feeling in the water, with all the money, the the owners of City can throw at their legal team, etc., to get them off the hook. I mean, Leicester found a legal reason for getting off their particular hook, didn't they? And you just think City have had so much warning over this and have got so strong a legal team. You can see them. I mean, they're going to be found guilty of something. They can't be not guilty of 105 charges, each one yet told separately, and the verdict from the jury is not guilty every time. I mean, that's not going to happen. But, it can happen where if they get their wrists slapped and get something of a fine, what's a fine mean to Man City? Absolutely nothing. All they want to do is protect the titles they've got and protect their Premier League status for the following season once we get the results. I cannot see them facing what happened to Glasgow Rangers, for example. I cannot see that happening. In theory, it can happen, but I just can't see it happening. I mean, can you, Steve? Can you see them?
Not at all. I think you're right. I think a fine. I think a fine is probably what they'll end up with. I think I think, and they'll end up with more points deducted than Forest did and Everton, of course. But that's the benchmark. If they get found guilty of 5 points of order and they're serious breaches financially, then you would imagine they'll have in the region of 15 to 20 points removed. That's what you would imagine. But it's not going to upset them massively. They probably could still finish in a Champions League position with that kind of deduction.
Well, I was going to say, if you think of the last 4 seasons when they've won the title, if you took 20 points off them, it wouldn't have relegated them, would it?
No, they'd still finish in the Champions League, which I think would be their main concern financially. The Champions League is the be all and end all to a team like Man City. But it's going to be interesting, John. We'll watch it with interest. Nothing really to report yet. Again, speculation. Slightly different this from Rob, who designed all of our flyers and designed the fanzine as well. Big shout out to him. We've got John's article in issue 2, which comes out in a couple of months' time. So I look forward to John's article. It's really good. I've got that pinned up as our first one, but issue 1's gone out to most people now. A couple of late stragglers. Still got about 12 left. I will reveal the amount of money we've raised tomorrow night and how much we've transferred to the Dementia Centre. It will surprise you, but big thank you to everybody involved. Rob says, what are John's memories of Niall Ranger, who's just signed for my local team, Kettering Town, Southern Premier Central League? He scored a brace on his debut.
Yeah, there's an interesting one. The Lone Ranger, I remember him very, very well. My first impressions of him when he first come in the Newcastle team, and in the main it was as a sub, etc., was what a talented boy this is. And he had everything. If ever there's a wasted career, and we've seen so many of them, Steve, both at Newcastle United and throughout the country, his is a wasted career because his God-given ability was absolutely staggering. But I mean, he made James Cagney look like a pussycat. Yeah. I mean, didn't he? I mean, he really was as mad as a hatter. And some of the things he did were mind-boggling. And I mean, he couldn't be bothered to get out of bed in the morning and make training in time. And bless him, every time he's had a little guilt complex and I'll do something about it and save my career, he set half a dozen goals for somebody and then disappeared completely. So I think what's got to happen is that guy who's a Kettering fan has got to enjoy him while he's getting him, and he's got to remember him and get a photograph of him, because he'll disappear pretty quickly. And all I'll say, the guy who said he signed for my team, Kettering Town, I said I wish them ever so well in the future, because I used to have some lovely days going down to Kettering Town with Gateshead when we were both in the conference way back when I owned Gateshead, and we played a lot of matches at Kettering Town. I knew the board at that time very, very well. I had great affection for Kettering Town. They've fallen on hard times compared with that at the moment, but they'll come again. All these clubs do. But with Niall Ranger, you'll get some lovely flashes of inspiration, and then he'll get some lovely flashes of him disappearing out the door, never to be seen again, in a flurry of exhaust fumes. But it was a wonderful talent, but it was wonderfully wasted, I'm afraid.
Barry Hogan, good evening. He says, John, I've been reading up on my Tyne history. Is it true that we almost sold Bob Moncur to Norwich before he had a chance to become the legend he is today? And did he take a while to get going?
Yes, we did almost sell him to Norwich, and I remember doing the story of Norwich being in for him, and it being considered whether they should sell him or not. I think they were worried about his lack of pace, etc., etc. But I mean, nobody was worried about Bobby Moore's lack of pace when he won the World Cup for England, and they both played in the same position. Yes, it is true. I mean, at one time, Bob was seen as an attacking wing half. They called it wing halves in those days, Steve. Attacking midfield player would say now. And that was never going to be his position. And he found his true position as a sweeper, as it was said in those days. Second centre half, we would say now. But yeah, we were going to sell him to Norwich. Thank goodness we didn't, because Harvey moulded him into a second Joe Harvey. If you looked facially at a young Bob Moncur, he looked like Joe Harvey. He was much thicker set than Joe Harvey. He had powerful legs, and whereas Joe Harvey particularly didn't. But we almost got rid of him. And I think with every footballer, there's always a tale, isn't there, about the day he almost left. And thank goodness he didn't, because he'd become a club legend. I mean, even Alan Shearer, he had a trial at Newcastle and they didn't take him, and he ended up at Southampton, and we ended up paying a world record fee to bring him back again. These things happen in football, but Bob almost went to Norwich. He did.
And Mark Bayer says, Gibbo, have you heard anything about reports that our chairman, Yasser, is flying in for the game again this weekend? It's been reported in a newspaper. Somebody's just sent me the link there as well. So it looks like he is flying in, and suppose he'd be interested in having more chats with the gaffer and with Paul Mitchell and Darren Eales and co.
Yeah, I mean, he's flies into Newcastle more now. I think when we finished fourth top, we hardly saw him, and now there's a bit of a mini crisis, and he's wanting to find out where the mini crisis is and what's causing it. He's flying in. Well, good on him. We want him to fly in. He is the chairman. So come here, and if necessary, yes, get a couple of guys together and knock their heads together and say, listen, pal, I'm paying you good money, and I want harmony here, because it's about time a few people, and I'm sweeping generalization that includes the boot room at Newcastle, it includes the dressing room at Newcastle, it includes the boardroom at Newcastle. I mean, would they like to have a look at what they call our wonderful club? 2 words: Newcastle United. And we are at our best when we are united. Because that is when everybody's pulling in the one direction. And of course, everybody says they are pulling in the one direction, because they're not going to say they're not, are they? I mean, nobody's going to say
crisis. What crisis? That's basically been the message that's been coming out of St James's Park for the last 7 to 10 days. But you're seeing one report saying that Newcastle United's Mitchell and Howe, speaking, they haven't got an issue, and then you're seeing another newspaper saying, they've now sorted out. They've sorted the differences out. Well, apparently they didn't have any differences to sort out. So you can see why fans are getting confused and getting dragged along with this whole story.
Of course we can, Steve. And the one thing, and I'll come back to what I said earlier, the one thing is Geordies aren't fools. We watch our team, hopefully with pride and desperate for results, and we've got some results. But you watch our team, tell me everything's hunky-dory. Tell me Gordon is as happy as a sandboy. Tell me Bruno is as happy as Larry. Tell me everything's okay with Joe Linton and Isaac. And tell me the fullbacks are very positive. And, it's not like that. What we don't know is what the problems are. And maybe they're slight. Who knows? And maybe they're individuals. Who knows? Maybe it is the training where Bunce has said, the intensity of training and the intensity of matches, the way we played, was wonderful for producing results, but it was also wonderful for stretching limbs almost to breaking point, and that's why we've got a lot of injuries. And it could be argued we've got less injuries this season, but it also could be argued that we've been less effective. Our identity, Stephen, which is us at full throttle, us on the front foot, us pressing high, us being absolutely relentless in the way we play, that identity's lost. Now, I know a few people that have said to me, yes, it is very difficult to play with that intensity for season after season after season. And the point to Leeds under Bielsa, where Bielsa was playing this wonderful football that all the Leeds fans enjoyed watching, etc., etc. It was very much in the way that Newcastle made fourth top. High press, relentless press, everybody physically superbly fit, uh, which is something that was referred to by Anthony Gordon when he first come. He couldn't get in the team for the first 6 months because he said he wasn't up to the fitness levels necessary for the high intensity play Newcastle were famous for. Now, Leeds played that way and got superb results, come up and in the first season up were absolutely sensational. But they couldn't keep it going under Bielsa. Why? Because they got a lot of injuries, if you remember. They got a lot of injuries. Bamford disappeared off the Bamford become Callum Wilson. You never seen sort of thing. So has that been a problem? And can we not marry the two? Or can we not have that intensity without injuries? And can we have fewer injuries but have to sacrifice the intensity? There's people getting an awful lot of money, Stephen, behind the scenes, whether we want to say it's Eddie or it's Mad Dog or it's Graham Jones or it's Bunce or it's Mitchell or it's Eels to sort these problems and solve these problems. And it might just be small tweaks that need doing. Um, but the first thing we've got to do is make everybody happy again, whether that's Eddie, whether it's Paul Mitchell, whether it's Anthony Gordon, whether it's Bruno. Make people. When we were fourth top, we played with a smile on my face, didn't we?
We did.
50,000 Geordies had a smile on their face, but so did all the players. I watched the team run out now, and there's a few players that haven't got a smile on their face now, only running out the tunnel.
Yeah.
And it's not over dramatizing the thing. It's just that we would love to be able to put our finger on it and know what it is, because then you've got a chance of putting it right. But we've got to presume that Eddie and Jason Tyndall have a good idea what it is, because they're right in on the inner sanctum. They see it all and do it all. And yes, I accept yet another point we talk about. Confidence is a huge game in football, is a huge part of football. As Shankly used to say, 7/10 of a game is played in the head. The other 3/10 is played on the glass. And that is absolutely true. And confidence isn't as high as it was. But I don't think it's just down to confidence, Steve. That's oversimplification, isn't it? There looks to be more to it than that. And as I say, we're running out of time to put it right, because we've got 3 big games coming up. And that's without thinking it's automatic that things are going to go right in the other couple of games, because one of them's Brighton. So you can say we've got 4 games out of 5, and Everton are going to be fighting for their life when we play them, although we should, for goodness sake, get a result there a week on Saturday. But, if we need to be back to what we do best to face the challenge of Man City, Chelsea and Arsenal.
Do you think Eddie Howe will contemplate dropping Bruno, says Roger, and do you think him and Tonali play well together?
Roger, that's a terrific question, and it's a one I've been asking myself. I would have no doubt about dropping Bruno, because if you forgot his name's Bruno Guimaraes, and if you just thought he's Joe Soap, and you looked at him, you would say he's waiting to be dropped. If his name was Sean Longstaff, everybody would say he should be dropped, wouldn't they? If Bruno's name was Sean Longstaff, they'd be saying, get him out the team. He's got no pace, etc., etc., etc. I don't think for 1 second that Eddie will drop him on Saturday, because it would look as if he was dropping him because of his ball across his own penalty area that killed the whole game at Fulham. But it wouldn't be, because his form before that in the Fulham game and in the other games, his form, as I've already said, against Brazil, for Brazil, was very, very poor. And he is playing poorly. And, Bruno, because he's skipper as well, I mean, he has, apart from once when I think he got cramp or a little in, he makes all these substitutions, but he never brings Bruno off, does he? Bruno's played awful, but he's never been sort of voluntarily brought off for a sub because he's the captain of the side. But can you tell me how you can start Bruno at the moment, but you can't start Tonali? And yes, good players can play together. That's the answer to Tonali and Bruno. But the law's got to be written down what those two are doing. Which one's going to sit and which one's going to go? Because one has to sit and one has to go. And which both of them have played as a six in the past, which one will you make the six at the moment? Because if you just throw them on the field, and just say, work it out, you're all good players, we will put Joe Linton on, we'll put Tonali on, and we'll put Bruno on, and individually that looks some threesome. But if you don't have a system, who sits and who goes, etc., you know what you end up with? You end up with a football team that looks like the Barbarians rugby team, where the Barbars used to play free-flowing rugby, didn't they? Because they were just friendlies, and everybody just went and popped the ball about, and nobody worried, and the scores ended up 76-69 or something, and it was terrific, and it was wonderful. But you can't have that in competitive football. This isn't a testimonial. You've got to give people specific jobs and make certain they do them. I mean, really, on paper, if you think we have a middle three of Joe Linton, Bruno, and Tonali, all three on the game, is there a better midfield anywhere in the Premier League? In theory, in practice, it might be very different.
Yeah. A couple of other good questions that have come in. Alan Thompson says, John, question, who would you say was the most underrated player that played for Newcastle? Mine is Paul Goddard, who was hardly mentioned. I thought he was a fantastic player. Barry chucked it into the mix. David McCreary said he did all the dirty work and held the midfield together, which is exactly what we need now. Paul Toon as well said David McCreary and Scott Sellers. I love them. So what's your thoughts on the most underrated player? Some good shouts already.
I was going to say they're terrific shouts. They are. And if we think about it, we'll be able to come up with an awful lot. I mean, Paul Goddard was an excellent centre forward. I think he beat the Newcastle record at the time. I think he scored in 8 successful games at a time when we weren't totally full of goals. And that's how good he is. Little McCreary did the job that we wanted him to do, that would be a 6 today, and allowed other more flamboyant midfielders, of which we had an awful lot in the past. We've had, from McDermott to Tommy Craig to Jinky to Cass. I'm not talking about McCreary's era. And then we've had Gaza and we've had Peter Beardsley that could play midfielder, striker. We've had all of those. I mean, if you were talking, for example, and I'm just plucking names out the air, underrated, what's underrated? Well, you could say Pop Robson was underrated in as the 1969 guy, in as much as he never got an England cap, and he was certainly good enough for that. Sheedy and Scott Sellers were underrated because simply what happened was Ginola come along with all the long hair, the French cigarettes, the Maurice Chevalier accent, and the flicking the ball up the trouser leg. I mean, he come along and everybody else in that position paled into insignificance. But they were absolutely top of the door. I mean, no question. So there has been an awful lot over a period of time. There's also been, and we'll have to do it someday, but of course you worry about the the legal Eagles. What about Newcastle's worst 11? We could all fill that up if we go back to the old days, couldn't we?
It is a series, John, that you're going to contribute to, I think, because we've already started it, and some of the suggestions are great, but that's one we'll maybe knock up for Christmas, John. But a couple of requests for shows, and people would love to know your worst 11. I'm sure there'll be some great names. I bet there is. I bet there's some good ones.
Yes.
Another question Another question from Alan. He says, John, the elephant in the room is the England manager's job. Do the players think Eddie will jump ship? Everyone, including the coaches. Do you think that is still hanging over the club, John, or not? Because we don't know. We don't know whether we know what Eddie said. We know what Eddie said. He's focused on the Newcastle United job. We also know that it has been said that the club wouldn't stand in his way if there was an official approach. So I guess the way it works with England is there's an official approach. He would go for an interview, and if he goes for an interview and he's successful, he's got a decision to make. It's as simple as that, John.
It is. But of course, it's worrying. There's complications. I mean, the first thing to be said is that it's Carsley's job to lose. Carsley is very much an FA man, brought up within the FA, fits the criteria perfectly, is the sort of guy that the Blazers love. He's followed the exact route that Gareth Southgate took through the age group, etc., to the main job. He started off with a couple of wins. He's in a very good group in this competition because there's no serious sides. Where's England going to lose in this group unless they reduce to 8 men in a game? Where are they going to lose? So it's Carsley's job to lose. And I think he'll probably get it permanently. And then the FA might regret doing that when the real heavyweights come along to play them. But I think he'll get it. But until there's a permanent appointment, this will be the elephant in the room. Of course it will be. My take on it is that Eddie Howe will not give up Newcastle United unless he believes Newcastle United have given up on him.
Correct.
I.e., he hasn't got the situation within the club that he did have, the freedom he had, the power he had, so he takes to his toes. But he won't do that unless he believes that things have changed dramatically at St. James's Park. And it's up to the chairman when he flies in, and it's up to Paul Mitchell to say, I want to work with you, not work against you. We want to be on the same side. That's why I was worried on the first day when I heard Paul talk at his interview. He was quite articulate. He was quite open. It was obvious that he's a great believer in himself, which is good. But the one thing that screamed out at me, Steve, when he was asked a question about Eddie, what do you do? What would I have done? I would have said straight away, the FA can forget about Eddie. He's done a wonderful job here. We adore him. The players adore him. The fans adore him. He's staying here, and we will move heaven and earth to make certain he stays here. He said we would be open to an approach, especially, he said, from the FA, because it's a compliment from the FA. Is it really? It would be a compliment if Real Madrid come in from Eddie's point of view, but not from ours. I mean, I think the door should have been slammed in the FA's face and bolted in that interview. And it disturbed a lot of people by saying we wouldn't stand in his way. And you know what? If I was Eddie Howe, I wouldn't be pleased to hear he wouldn't stand in his way. I would be thinking, hey, how much did they want me? How much am I adored in the boardroom, like I'm adored in the dressing room, like I'm adored on the terraces, when they say they wouldn't stand in my way? I mean, I don't think that, and I'm not saying that was what Paul Mitchell wanted to get across, but it, at the very least, it was an unfortunate phrase.
Yeah, I would agree.
At the very worst, it was opening up the whole spectrum, both to the press criticizing it and to the fans openly rebelling against it. I mean, it was. By the way, Paul, in fairness, is an astute man, and you can work out, Steve, what questions are going to be asked, can't you? You can work out at a press conference. They'll ask about the manager. They'll ask about how I can dovetail with him. They'll ask about the policy over transfers. In 2 of those 3 answers he got wrong. Don't say that the door's open to Eddie Howe, and don't say that the transfer policy is not fit for purpose when it's give us Isaac and Gordon and Bruno and Bopman and Pope and also going to upset Eddie, who was very much part of that policy. So I would like to think, rather than it being a deliberate indifference to Eddie, or rather than it being Paul flexing his muscles and saying, listen, I'm the guy in charge here, I would like to prefer to think it was just unfortunate phrasing and wasn't meant the way it sounded. Because if it was meant the way it sounded, it is frightening.
Yep, Alan, you're right. Spot on, John. This is what the fans all wanted to hear. Would have brought harmony to the club. John, we've only got 2 minutes left. We've got to look at the match. I'm going to get your Man City prediction in a minute. Personally, I just wanted to ask you what you thought of the fight at the weekend, because you and I are both boxing fans. Anthony Joshua, I'll give you my opinion. John, I think he's finished. I think that's it. I don't see a way back for AJ. I think we're entering one of those dark periods in the heavyweight division again, because Tyson Fury's on his way out. AJ's on his way out. Dubois not the answer. And I genuinely think that it tells you how bad that division is when the best heavyweight's a cruiserweight.
Yeah, which is what he is. He's a cruiserweight, and I agree with you 100%. I mean, AJ's well finished. He's 35. I mean, he's built magnificently, but he's everything about him is wrong. His feet are placed wrong. He places them square instead of one forward, one back. That makes him vulnerable to a punch. And when he gets punched these days, he's got a glass jaw where once upon a time he could take punches. I mean, he goes, for a bloke of his size, he goes down like a sack of tatties, doesn't he?
He's forgot the fundamentals. Keep your hands up and lead with your left. You know what I mean?
Totally. And also, often with boxers, and you know this, Steve, the last person that knows when they're finished is the fighter himself.
Yeah,
because he wants his glory days. He wants to hang on to his glory days. He's 35 and he's saying, oh no, there's bags more left for us. Like what? I mean, if he fights Fury, it'll only be because Fury's lost to the cruiserweight. He'll not fight him if Fury wins. And therefore, it's two people both on the slide trying to batter each other. If he has another fight with you boys, he'll get his head taken off again. You know, what is left from? Nothing's left from.
Reminds me of the days of Freddie Mills and that. People just not knowing when to retire. Frank Bruno, it's all about a payday, and it's sad. It really is sad. 96 credit to 96,000 people there. I thought the rest of the show was great. I thought I had a really good undercard. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Okay, Man City then at home this coming Saturday, 12:30 kickoff. How do you see it going, John? Quick prediction.
Well, yes, I'll keep it nice and short. I hope it doesn't go like AJ went. I hope we don't get battered to the ground, round after round after round. I mean, my main hope is that on any one day, as I've already said, some side is going to beat Manchester City. I think City's come at the wrong time for us to follow Fulham, because if we'd remained unbeaten, we would have had a little something there. I think we will lose this one, but if we are going to lose it, can we lose it with dignity? Can we lose it with a real fight? Can we get to the end of 90 minutes where 50,000 Geordies applaud the team? Because if we give everything, we stick with our team. We always have. If we give everything for the shirt, we will say, that's fair enough, we'll take it. I want us at the end of the game, and I think we'll have lost it, but at the end of the game, I want us to get a round of applause and say, hey, we had a pop. What I don't want to be is AJ. That's frightening.
Okay, I'm going to go 2-2. I do like Mark's suggestion, though. We'll finish with this. 3-1 to Newcastle. Haaland to score all 4, including his first hat-trick for Newcastle in a Man City shirt prior to signing for us when PSR is scrapped. There's a positive end to the show.
Well, I tell you what, that's wonderful. And I've just seen a pink pig fly past the window, so it's possible that it could happen.
Get well soon, Supermac. Hopefully you'll be back with us soon. John, have a good night tonight, mate. See you next week, pal. Take care.
God bless. Take care then. Bye.